Hey everybody, welcome back to the Voluntary Exchange Podcast. This is No Chains. Today's video is going to be about protests, revolutions, and the difference between a authorized revolution and an unauthorized revolution. So, unbeknownst to the majority of the world, protests begun in Egypt over the weekend, end of last week, against the dictator Sisi. If you're not familiar, during the Arab Spring, the Egyptian revolution, in my opinion, was one of the most organic ones that took place. And my evidence is that after the revolution that took place in 2019, elections were held and the Muslim Brotherhood was elected. Now, at the time, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt was not the radical, militant Muslim Brotherhood of other countries, but mostly just old rich guys. They were not very pro-American, and the revolution was canceled, and the military moved in and took over again. And then Obama applauded it, and now Sisi has become another friend of America. So, now you have protests in the streets just like then, and I covered that every day for the entire time. I lived on Twitter. I was watching every video that came in, was following journalists on the ground on both sides, communicating with them directly. I have friends who have relatives that live there. And I made sure and I watched it from the beginning. It was as organic as it could have been. Now, looking back, were there outside influences trying to push out Mubarak to destabilize the U.S. regime overall? Yes, of course. But proving the point that it is an unauthorized revolution, it was immediately canceled. This time, it is not being immediately canceled, because the military there will destroy it. But it is not getting any backing from anybody, and is not being covered by the Western media or the Gulf state media. Why? Because it is not supposed to succeed. So I will continue to be following this as it unfolds, but just for the people that weren't aware, it's a smaller protest, and it looks like it is building, and the Egyptians the first time took on the regime to a point where Mubarak had to step down and real elections were held. I watched those street fights. I watched them fight the military. I watched them fight and turn members of the military on their side. Now, I will, of course, research this and see if, I'm getting tricked again, but unlike Hong Kong, which has clear connections to the United States, the United States is already backing the government here. So, tracking who's influencing this revolution is interesting. Now, could it be Iran? Could be. But as I was reading, Sisi did sign an IMF debt loan back in 2016, which always sucks the energy and the economy and the food out of a country. And this could be a replacement coup. What I mean by that is it could be being pushed by the Western and Gulf powers to give the people the feeling that they are overthrowing the dictator, and just have him replaced with somebody just as bad, to give them the feeling that they did something, but also provide them with some apathy so they will go home. But from my experience dealing with Egyptians and people that I know, and the people and this is unlike Hong Kong, unlike Syria, unlike other areas, I have a closer ties to a lot of the people on the ground here through 10 years of talking to them via the internet and getting to know the different factions and who's real and who's not. why would this, and why is Egypt so powerful and so important to keep under U.S. control? As we all know, it shares a border with Israel and has an agreement with Israel to keep the Gazans held captive on the southern border. And Mubarak has had military and defense agreements with Israel and the United States as an intermediary going back a long time. The Gulf states also want to keep Egypt in line. If anybody actually paid attention to how 9/11 rolled out, most of Al-Qaeda at the time of 9/11 were Saudis and Egyptians. A lot of the heads of Al-Qaeda at the time joined Al-Qaeda because of the treatment they received under their dictator Mubarak in Egypt. So the people of Egypt they know the game. They know who holds them down, and they know who suppresses them. So the idea that this is some kind of color revolution doesn't make any sense to me, but I will continue to research. But another revolution that continues to not be covered is the Yellow Vest revolution in France, as we see in these two photos. So in France, the Yellow Vest protests have been going on for the 45th week. They are not covered by the West, and for the same reasons. Macron is an authorized governor of France for the overall European Union / U.S. Western Western order, and they do not want to entice the popular uprising to expand. Now, I am getting reports that the Yellow Vest protests are being infiltrated as they join the climate change marches, and there are members of Antifa being involved. Now, that could be a number of things. That could be the Yellow Vests are being infiltrated by Antifa to discredit them. They could also be the Yellow Vests could also be joining the climate change protests to screw those up. But they could also be joining the climate change protests because the climate change protests are getting coverage internationally while, and this was the point of the video, the Yellow Vest protests in France and the Egyptian protests are getting none. If you're looking for coverage of the Egyptian protests, I swear the only place I've been able to find them in detail are Arab-speaking, and there were some in the Israeli newspapers. But if you just go straight to Twitter, you can watch the action unfold in live time on there in video form. And again, they know what they're doing. I watched them take a small protest in Tahrir Square and expand that to the point where the government fell, and that was real. Mubarak was flown out by the U.S. The U.S. held elections, or allowed the Egyptian to hold elections, and then and what happened, of course, which always happens when you have a democracy, the people who lost the election and didn't want the Muslim Brotherhood to run the country for 4 years or 8 years, were tricked into calling on the military to cancel it for them so they could get, we don't want the Muslim Brotherhood to run us for 4 years, even though they could vote them out in a real democracy and you guys and people could actually, express their will. They called on the military to side with them and squash the Muslim Brotherhood government, which is why, what we're seeing in the United States and other countries is when you have direct democracy, the losing side will sacrifice their principles for state power to take back the power that they lost. And that's what we kind of saw, sadly, in 2011. Instead of just letting the election run its course and living under the Muslim Brotherhood for a couple of years, they asked for the military to step in along with foreign interference, which the U.S. was more than happy to do. So this looks like it's another attempt at something along those lines. I don't know if the popular uprising will have the same appeal to all factions of Egyptian life like it did the first time because of the results of that one. But from everything I've seen, this is not a Hong Kong color revolution, as the imperialists are already in power. So it's not being covered, and that is why, in my opinion, and I will continue to cover it as I move forward, I have a kind of a soft spot for the Egyptians after 2011. So that's it. This has been No Chains. Just a little update on the revolutions they don't want you to know about. The Yellow Vest one continues to expand, but it looks like it's becoming more and more of a commingled, just overall take to the streets on the weekend type situation where you have different factions getting involved. So until next time, this has been the Voluntary Exchange Podcast. I appreciate all the support. Check me and Truth Force and the Information War over on Decentralized News YouTube channel on decentralizedtruth.com. We're also over on Minds and on BitChute. And then I post all my stuff over on the Steem blockchain, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency that kind of focuses on social media and using the blockchain for that type of content. So there's Steem It, where you can post blogs, you can post your videos, you can post your music, you can post recipes, whatever you like, and get a couple dollars for your work, and provide your and it's decentralized without any censorship, so you don't have to worry about your content being flagged and demonetized because big tech doesn't like it. I post my videos over on 3Speak, which is a video posting platform on the Steem blockchain, which is trying to rival YouTube. So check us out over there. There's lots of content creators, some banned from YouTube, like Tommy Robinson and other European free speech activists that have been canceled in their countries and try to get their content out. Disagree or agree with them, doesn't matter. Everybody should have a place where they can speak their mind. So that's been it. This has been No Chains. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.